Good evening and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. Since our first episode, the political landscape has shifted yet again. Coming up in this episode, we talk to the DNA leader, Bran McCartney, on the reasons for his resignation and his candidate selections. The decision by Kenyatta Gibson to withdraw from the Golden Isles constituency has caused the FNM to select another candidate. And the weekend dump fire becomes an even hotter political football. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Welcome back to On the Record. In tonight's episode, we're going to be looking at three very important topics. The fallout that led to the abrupt resignation of Senator Branville McCartney, candidate selection with the various political parties, and we're going to take a look at the devastating dump fire that had southwest New Providence ablaze last Sunday and most of this week. Well, On the Record recently sat down with Branville McCartney, leader of the Democratic National Alliance and, of course, now former senator and leader of opposition business in the Senate. He spoke to us candidly about the fallout with the alliance or lack thereof between himself and 7 defectors of the FNM.
I became a senator. There was no plan for opposition, for the opposition moving forward. There were comments made about different things on different days that were inconsistent with the truth, and hence I resigned. I'm not here to talk about Loretta and that situation. We could talk about something else, but I've said all what I had to say about that. I'm not going to rehash that, to bring that back up and to move forward. Yeah.
And then it was time to talk about the candidate selection. He admits that selecting the right candidate in each constituency is daunting, but even his party has had to renominate a candidate after a withdrawal.
Yes, we had Southern Shores, Ethric Bow withdraw. He had a personal issue with Pinewood candidate Lincoln Bain. He withdrew without discussions with the leadership of the party. We accepted his resignation, and now we have Dr. Madeline Sawyer, who is the candidate and was ratified publicly last week for the Southern Shores constituency.
How do you explain a Lincoln Bain who would have been seeking an FNM nomination, didn't receive it, but now receives a DNA nomination?
Just like you explained, quite a number of persons who sought the DNA's nomination, and now some of them are with the PLP and FNM and didn't get it. Same thing, nothing different.
Do you, though, question their loyalty to the party versus just wanting to get a seat?
Well, I think the bottom line is if you are given an opportunity, or if you wish to run for a particular party and you did not get the nomination, and I use the case of Lincoln Bain. He continued working in the constituency. He's very much welcome in there. He lives in that constituency. And the association that was formerly part of the FNM was very much behind him as well in coming to the DNA. He was a good choice, and I think he'll win that seat, hands down.
There's more of that interview later in the show. When we come back, we've got some feedback. Bradley Roberts, chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party, and Frankie Campbell, the Free National Movement's candidate for Southern Shores, are my guests on the other side of the road. Welcome back to On the Record. As I said before the break, PLP Chairman Bradley Roberts joins us. Also in studio is FNM candidate for Southern Shores, Frankie Campbell. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Mr. Roberts, you've been involved in politics for a very long time and has held down chairmanship and defended your party vehemently over the years. Mr. Campbell is an essential part of the new FNM under the leadership of Dr. Hubert Minnis. He is now hopeful for the constituency of Southern Shores. Gentlemen, Mr. McCartney had a whirlwind relationship with the 7 FNM members of Parliament that decided they could no longer work under the leadership of Dr. Hubert Minnis. He was appointed to the Senate, became leader of opposition business in that chamber, and then he suddenly resigned. Mr. Roberts, I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts on his appointment and sudden resignation?
Well, obviously it was a stillborn relationship, continuation of a ball of confusion that exists among the opposition forces in the country. It is sad that it continues today. The Gang of 7 is still out there in left field by themselves, and Mr. Minnis is continuing on, leaving them out there by themselves.
Mr. Campbell?
Well, the truth of the matter is, I wasn't overly concerned about what they were doing. The Free National Movement was focused on its mission, focused on its way forward, without many of the 7 being even part of the equation. So it was not a significant loss. And Dr. Minnis continues on, focused on the relief that is needed for the Bahamian people.
I'm just curious though, has there been any effort to reach out to the supporters of those 7 who obviously would have voted for the FNM, who would have supported their individual members? Has there been any effort, as far as the party is concerned, to reach out to them and to sort of bring them on, or make sure they remain in the fold?
Well, there is a continuous invite for all persons who formerly supported the Free National Movement, even from the Ingram era, who may have had some issue with individuals or some particular policy. We reach out to Branville McCartney as a former FNM. So yes, of course, those who would have recently felt disaffected, the door continues to be open. We are a big tent. We are a family-oriented organization. Of course, we have our democratic process, but the door is open to anyone who once was. We are inviting them back, and anyone who is not happy where they are, we're inviting them into the FNM.
Do you all see them, Mr. Roberts, as sort of low-hanging fruit you can go after?
Yes, and we have been able to attract a number of the FNM supporters to the PLP ranks because they see that the FNM is fragmented, they are directionless, and they have no focus. And they see the PLP as being a unified party and one that has a direction that is defined and a goal that we are setting for the Bahamian people.
Well, you know, Jerome, I would say it's based on a matter of opinion and perception. It ought to be easy for the governing party, with all that it's supposed to have to offer, quote unquote, to pick in opposition members. But when you see members of the governing party sitting in Parliament coming over to the opposition, that is something you need to be questioned.
So then, of course, it does raise a good point. You've got 2 who were once PLP members now into the FNM fold. Your response to that?
Yes, well, one of them is no longer in the FNM fold. He's out there, one of the Gang of 7. The other one is very low profile, and you hardly hear from him. So I don't know whether that is a fair comparative in terms of the PLP standing. They were individuals that we embraced. We brought them along. They were with another party, and they obviously didn't fit in with the PLP, so they went on their own, and we're moving ahead without them.
Mr. Campbell, one of the criticisms that I have heard just from sort of lay people in the community is not having or not hearing a clear message from the FNM. A lot of people said the FNM's message is the PLP is not good for the country. We need to vote them out, get rid of them. That's the message coming from them. Is it more than that? Is there a larger message that maybe myself and others are missing?
Well, the Free National Movement has launched its manifesto. It is there for everyone to see. Everything is not written in detail. If we were to detail every single item, there wouldn't be sufficient space. But there is a broad perspective of where the Free National Movement wish to take the Bahamian people, how we wish to advance the economy, how we wish to review the educational system and make the necessary upgrades, our approach to crime, our approach to local government. There is a speaking point to each of those areas. So to say that the Free National Movement hasn't articulated its view is not necessarily true in my humble opinion.
Okay. Mr. Roberts, on the other side of the coin, you have issues like Bahama, the looming crime issue, BAMSI, which we brought up on the show, that are really out there lingering over the head of the PLP government, that people feel these issues have not been addressed. Are you planning to address them, or how are you planning to address those going into the election?
Well, I find it difficult to believe that Bahama is the issue. Bahama is happening right now for all Bahamians to see. I drove by it this morning, and Bahama will open next month, the first phase of it. And if we had embraced the course of action that the Free National Movement wanted the development to go, that place would have never gotten open. The millions of dollars that was owed to Bahamian contractors and suppliers would have never been paid. But it is now being opened, and thousands of Bahamians are being employed on that project.
Gentlemen,
Jerome,
go ahead.
I have an issue with that. To say that there is no issue with Bahama, if everything is so nice and dandy with Bahama, why is the heads of agreements still sealed in the courts? If you have nothing to hide, then let the people see what is it that you're claiming is so nice and dandy. And as far as the position that the F&M took when the bankruptcy was filed in Delaware, if my memory serves me correct, there was a similar incident at Atlantis, and business never stopped at Atlantis. They went through their bankruptcy proceedings, and business never stopped. So to suggest that business would have stopped is not necessarily true.
Gentlemen,
But first of all, sir, no heads of agreement is covered in any court matter. The proceedings of the liquidation is a matter that has been sealed by a judge of the Supreme Court, not the government of the Bahamas.
So it was the judge of the Supreme Court that requested that it be sealed, or was it the government that requested that it be sealed?
The judge acquiesced to a request,
Was it the
and he made
government
the
that,
decision.
was it the government that requested? Simple question.
And it was the judge who
Was it
gave
the
the decision to seal it.
Was it the government that requested?
We
Simple
are
question.
obviously out of
And
impasse.
if it was the government, why?
And I gave the simple answer.
We are going to take our first break in the show. Stay with us. We're going to be talking to these gentlemen again on the other side of the break. Welcome back to On the Record. In our first segment, we watched a portion of an interview with DNA leader and former Senator Brian McCartney, where he spoke briefly on his resignation and went on to talk about the whole issue of candidacy within various political parties. Our guests, Mr. Bradley Roberts, PLP chairman, and Frankie Campbell, F&M candidate. We're going to take a look now at another portion of our interview with the DNA leader, where he spoke about the burning city dump and this menace to the residents of Southwest New Providence. Let's have a look.
A year ago, on the 22nd of March, 2016, the DNA was out on the dump when the dump was burning, because it burns every year this time. We were out there outlining suggested solutions for the remediation of the dump, making it waste to energy. That fell on deaf ears. It never got the media attention, quite frankly. But you know, we have a situation where the former F&M administration had an opportunity to remediate the dump. They got $25 million, a loan of $25 million from the IDB, and $10 million from the government itself for the remediation of the dump back in the late 1990s. The fact of the matter is, the dump still burns. We don't know where that money has gone. We've paid back $15 million as a people of that money today, and every month we continue to repay that money. In addition to that, under this administration, there was a $650 million letter of intent signed by Renwood Wells. That debacle regarding stellar waste management. Stellar waste management was a project to fix the dump from waste energy. Nothing came out of that. And we are where we are today. The questions are still unanswered in terms of what transpired with regards to the signing of the letter of intent.
Gentlemen, Mr. McCartney brings up some very interesting points during that interview. Mr. Roberts, I'm going to start with you, saying that over a year ago, his party made a valid waste to energy suggestion in regards to the dump, but those suggestions, he says, fell on deaf ears. Why is this problem continuing to exist even now?
First of all, Jerome, let me commiserate with the people affected by the fire at the city dump, and to assure them that the government has declared that they will render all the assistance necessary to reinstate their position. Firstly, the fire, as I understand it, was not started at the dump. So it cannot be blamed on the dump itself, but it was started outside of the dump. But that is neither here nor there.
The dump burned and
but it
caused
burned, yes.
the
And
issue, yeah.
it has been going on, this issue has been going on for some time. Several attempts, as Branwell McCartney has stated, was made, starting with the Free National Movement's tenure under Dr. Hubert Minnis, who was the minister responsible for health and for the other services at the time. The contract was signed during his tenure. Yes, that failed. And the present administration is trying to address this problem. And the minister responsible for the environment announced yesterday that he believes that he has the way forward. It's not a simple, straightforward matter. And contrary to what Branwell McCartney advanced, that they have a solution, I've seen many recommendations from so-called experts as to what is the solution there. But time will tell what is the correct one.
But Mr. Roberts, if I can for a moment, this is, as you admit, this is not a new problem. This is a consistent problem.
Yes, it has.
Why has it not been a priority of this government in this term to address it?
There has been a serious attempt to address this matter. And my recollection is that the number of fires at the dump has been reduced significantly during this tenure in office. And that this unfortunate situation has obviously electrified the position to where it is today. And it is a problem that must be resolved, one way or the
Mr.
other.
Roberts, one fire is one too many for the people who live in that area.
Yes,
Whether
that is
it's been
correct.
reduced or
Not
not,
only the people in that
one is
area,
one
but
too
all
many.
the people
I can tell you,
affected by
I
it,
don't
yes.
live very far away, but I know.
I was
know the
affected by it.
Yes.
Yes.
So okay, we're going to now, Mr. Campbell. You would have heard what Mr. McCartney said in reference to the 25 million from the IDB and some 10
Actually,
million,
30 million plus.
30 million plus, if you put it all together, under the previous F&M administration.
Let me first join with Mr. Roberts in empathizing with the persons in the immediate area who suffer most from the dump fire. As it relates to the monies that would have been borrowed or granted, the leader of the Free National Movement would have spoken to that. He would have indicated that the monies would have been allocated for various aspects, not specifically or only for the management of the landfill itself. Be that as it may, he has also indicated that he is not satisfied with the results. Subsequent to that, though, we had an opposition that became the government, indicating that from day one, they had the solution for this and many other problems. We're now hearing 8 weeks before an election that they still have the solution, even though there have been fires every year. Mr. Roberts has indicated that, to his recollection, there have been fewer fires. I'm not going to argue with his recollection, but we know that every year around this time, there are these fires. Last year, I too was present at the dump site when I would have suggested to the powers that be, take a flight, because I know they like flights and trips, you know. So I would have said, take a flight, but not too far, right to Grand Bahama, where there is a similar landfill with garbage coming from Bahamians, but it's maintained in such a way that the fire department hadn't been called at that point for 3 or 4 years. and let them tell us what it is or show us what it is that they're doing. But there's no indication that that suggestion was taken. I visited the site subsequent to that and saw that one pump was put in place because the Minister of Environment had indicated that he would make more water available.
But sir, do you also accept the argument then that the FNM too had an opportunity?
Subsequent governments, as I would have
had
indicated,
an opportunity to address it.
subsequent governments would have had an opportunity. The FNM didn't do all that it could have or maybe ought to have. But the problem exists now with a group that came in saying they had the solution.
I do want to bring up another issue that Mr. McCartney would have brought up, this $650 million letter of intent with Stellar Waste Management. Today, I don't think it's been addressed adequately by either side. While Mr. Wells was with the PLP, it was criticized by the FNM. He's changed sides. We don't hear much from the FNM on the matter anymore. Nothing from the PLP. I'm going to start, Mr. Roberts, with you.
Well, I recall when Mr. Wells was under fire and he was still in our corner, Dr. Minnis demanded the FNM, they screamed to high heaven that they must have an answer. Then Mr. Wells flew the coop and he went and became an FNM supporter. And he still has not produced an answer that is satisfactory to the Bahamian people.
Well, doesn't the government have an obligation, though, because it was done under the auspices of the
Well,
government?
we gave a response. We gave a response that the FNM rejected. They now have wells in their bosom, and we asked for an answer. Dr. Minnis is claiming that he is satisfied with the answer that Glenwood Wells has given him. I wish he would make it public so that the public could understand what it is that he was disclosed to him.
Mr. Campbell, he brings up a very important
The
point.
government never gave an answer. The government danced around the question. They never gave an answer. Glenwood Wells is now a member of the Free National Movement. He and the hierarchy of the party, I'm sure, would have had discussions around that. There appears to be some level of satisfaction, but what I do know is that the question that from the opposition side still remains one of the questions on the list of many questions for the government to answer. So they still could answer.
Gentlemen, we are about out of time in this segment. I do want to give you
Mr.
an opportunity
Wells
to
is
wrap
the one
up.
who has the answer, and you said the government was answering.
My information is the
Gentlemen,
government gave him the
very quickly,
authorization.
we are in a season where candidates are being ratified and getting ready. Mr. Roberts, from your perspective, what is going to be key for the PLP and its candidates in getting the message out to voters?
Well, our message is being formulated, and our manifesto will be disclosed to the public very shortly. And we will be presenting a blueprint for the future from our perspective after we have carried out considerable research and consultation with our supporters and Bahamians across the length and breadth of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And you will see that our presentation is one that the Bahamian people will give serious consideration and will embrace, in my opinion.
Mr. Campbell, I'm going to give you the last word here. From your perspective, what should we be looking for from the FNM in the rollout of its candidates and its election
Well,
campaign?
let me just point out, it's interesting to hear the government saying that their message is being formulated. They had 4.5 years to formulate. They should be happy to run on their record. It is apparent that they're going to be running away from their record. The Free National Movement has put together a dynamic and diverse group of young persons, middle-aged persons, experienced persons, persons from various backgrounds, religious, business, etc., that will represent all the demographics of the Bahamian community. The Free National Movement is not running away from its record. It's not running away from what it would have done and accomplished in the 15 years that it governed. Were they perfect? Were we perfect? No, we made some mistakes, but we're happy to stand by what we did, and we're happy to say to the Bahamian people that we will be doing more of what we did, we will be improving on what we did, we will be adding value to their lives.
Mr. Campbell,
Jerome,
thank you very much,
Jerome,
sir.
PLP
Mr.
is
Roberts.
not running from its record.
Thank you
It
very
has a
much.
super record.
Mr. Roberts, thank you very much for coming. Mr. Campbell, thank you very much for coming. Gentlemen, our time is up. Thank you for being on the record. We appreciate your input. We hope to see you back here with us again sometime soon. I hope to have you back on in another time and place. We'll be right back right after this break. As the nature of politics dictates, candidates, politicians, and even leaders can change allegiance. This political season is no different. Vonique Tudavar News gives us a glimpse into the latest moves.
It may sound like a game of musical chairs, but it's just another day in Bahamian politics.
Well, the F&M candidate for Golden Isles has withdrawn his candidacy.
Kenyatta Gibson withdrew his nomination, citing business obligations. However, sources say the former MP who quit the PLP and crossed the floor in 2009 was actually axed by the F&M over a potentially embarrassing situation. Gibson's out, but Michael Pintard is back in as the F&M's man for Marco City, despite his controversial resignation as party chairman.
Give us an opportunity to work tirelessly on your behalf. Because we are not doing this simply as a vocation, as an occupation. We are doing this because we love this country and we have your best interests at heart.
Has enough time passed to get back in voters' good graces, or will they embrace the Green Team, which welcomed former F&M member Lincoln Bain, who defected after he failed to secure a nomination?
Bain's DNA nomination came after he was unsuccessful in securing a Free National Movement candidacy. The F&M nominated Reuben Ramming for Pinewood instead.
The PLP hasn't escaped the effects of silly season, though. There's the fight for Freetown. After voting in favor of former DNA candidate Wayne Monroe, rejected candidate Frank Smith fought back, pushing for Monroe to be pushed aside.
I'm not afraid of a fight.
Who will emerge the victor in this political game of chess? Perhaps Tall Pines MP Leslie Miller said it best.
And the people will decide at 6 p.m. when those polls close and those votes are counted, who they have the faith in to take them into the future.
Thank you, Vonique. Well, back in our studio, guests for this half are Mark Humes, the F&M candidate for Fort Charlotte, Lincoln Bain, activist, talk show host, businessman, and DNA candidate for Pinewood, and Wayne Monroe, noted attorney who has been given the PLP nod for the constituency of Freetown. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this show. These men all play intricate roles in their respective political parties. Gentlemen, let's talk about candidate selection. Mr. Bain, I'm going to start with you. You were originally under the F&M umbrella trying to seek that nomination. Things didn't go how you expected, how some of your supporters expected even. You're now with the DNA. That question looms in the minds of many. Why the switch? And it brings into question whether you were just seeking a nomination for candidacy, for election, or what?
No, that is not what I was seeking. What I was seeking is to represent the people of Pinewood Gardens. Okay. It is a neighborhood where I am from, where I grew up. It is where I have a passion and I want to see change. Okay, I've been in that neighborhood since 1982, and we have some specific needs in that neighborhood that other neighborhoods don't have. You know, that neighborhood is in the news regularly with the flooding and other issues that we have, and that is what I wanted to represent. You worked for ZNS before, then you worked for Cable 12. You know, the mission is what is most important, and the purpose. My purpose was not the F&M. My purpose was the people of Pinewood Gardens.
But when you look at philosophies of the party, how does that line up with what you're trying to do?
With the philosophy of the DNA?
Versus, let's say, the philosophy of the F&M.
Well, the F&M is a party that is an old boys club, and in my opinion is controlled by certain stakeholders. The DNA is not that way. The DNA is a party of urban professionals and entrepreneurs who want to see change. And I think I fit in well within that spectrum. I want to see change in this country, and I think this time we're going to see change.
Mr. Monroe, you two were under the banner of the DNA last election. You're under the PLP now. What's the reason for the switch?
Well, it's not really a switch. I've said so when I joined the PLP. And when the DNA was being formed in the last election, the late Kurt McCartney asked me to assist in terms of being a candidate to add gravitas to the list of persons who, up to that point, may have lacked it. And I agreed to do it for one term. Brian McCartney would have known from the time we went to England in 1985 that I was a PLP. We had arguments around it. And so that would have been clear after I'd given my service as I promised Kurt. I returned home.
So you never really intended to say, but what if you had been elected?
My judgment, and in my profession, you make judgments. I did not see any possible chance that the Bahamian public would elect a nation party, any of the candidates, and my judgment proved to be correct by the result.
Mr. Mark Humes, yourself, a former DNA, now turned FNM. Same question. What is it that took you over to the FNM?
Well, again, it's surprising to hear Mr. Monroe say that, what he said, but for me, it was about leadership. You know, when I joined the DNA, this was my first foray into frontline politics. As the chairman, you know, there were certain missions that we were about, changing the way politics was done in the Bahamas. And as time went on and as I started to get to know the leadership, become intimate, a little more intimate with the leadership, I recognized that this wasn't a relationship, you know, understanding the leader a little bit more, recognizing that I didn't really feel like the leadership of the party was interested in being different, in being that change type of party. I didn't think it was the right relationship for me to be in anymore. And so that was the reason for leaving. The reason for joining the FNM was the same basic reason for joining up with Mr. McCartney. I feel a lot of my mission is helping where, you know, there's a need for help. And I thought that, you know, there wasn't an issue with the FNM. It was an issue with leadership at the time when I was with the DNA.
Your issue would have been with Hubert Ingram.
The issue was with leadership attitudes. Yes, I'm not familiar with Mr. Ingram. I wasn't familiar with Mr. Ingram. I'm sure he's a wonderful gentleman. Mr. McCartney, the one that you don't see on television, is a wonderful gentleman, but it's an attitude. And I wasn't, you know, the same way I felt about the attitude that was running the country. I wasn't prepared to work along with the party, the DNA, to put that same attitude on the country again.
So I want to talk a little bit about sort of what's happening with candidates and this whole moving around, even within this particular dispensation right now. You have, just this week, Kenyatta Gibson would have withdrawn his bid for candidacy. Howard Johnson, Walt Saunders, Leonard Sands have all withdrawn their bids from South Beach, Mike Albane, and Grandstown, respectively, within the FNM. That raises the question, what is going on? What is happening? You've got now 4 candidates who have withdrawn from the party in a run-up to a major election.
Mm-hmm. And they all gave their decisions for leaving, you know, and we have to accept what they put forward as their reasons for leaving. But what you do recognize is within the last few months, you look at the quality of candidates that did come on board. And sometimes I look at it as when it appears that things may be falling apart, they actually may be falling into place. And I think that's what you see happen when we, again, made that the final cut, not final cut, but when we closed out our candidate selection this past week. You look at the team, the quality of the team, the diversity of the team, the strength of each individual. Things were actually falling into place for the FNM. And what you see in the 39 that we've selected is possibly the best government that this country will have in 40 years.
Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this. You look at this scenario now, you've heard his response. As a candidate, do you not take these things into consideration, your business concerns, etc., before you offer yourself for candidacy?
Well, but before I go there, I'm shocked at his answer about leadership as it relates to the DNA or the FNM. Mr. Humes told me himself that he would not even join the FNM if Minnis won the leadership during the first convention. I was trying to convince him to give Dr. Minnis a chance, and he said that Dr. Minnis was not a leader and that he could not see himself in the FNM, and he would not even join, let alone consider candidacy, as long as Dr. Minnis was leader of that party. That's a conversation that I had with him and that he's had with others. So that surprised me now that all of a sudden he sees something different.
But let me just address that. And Mr. Bain is correct. At the time, this was probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yes.
But what I have seen over the past few years is the type of leadership that we need in this country. Dr. Minnis has been gutted throughout and has never said a word, a mumbling word, in defense to anyone. And when we look at the state of our country and delinquency in our country, and the only thing that we know is that, you know, if someone attacks you, you attack back. What I've seen in the quality of his character in these few months is that that's the type of leader that we possibly need at the helm of this country, where someone is able because in leadership you're attacked, but you also should be able to stay focused. So when you see me deciding to make a choice to join the FNM, it was about the character of the leader.
I want to get
saw.
Mr. Monroe in on this discussion.
Jerome, I really don't want to get into an FNM fight. Eh?
No.
But let me
It's a
say,
discussion, sir.
But let me say this. I do not understand how qualities change over 3 years to make someone who is unacceptable acceptable. I would find that shocking and frightening, because if I elected that person as leader of this country, I don't know what I would have the next year, 2 years out, 3 years out. The fact that you could have candidates who clearly don't make a comprehensive assessment before they offer themselves, and the vetting process, because I was announced as a candidate for Freetown, I'm not. My party is still vetting myself and Frank Smith. Either the party does not have an extensive enough vetting process, or else it has completely failed. And I think this is the problem that the FNM has. You do not know what you will see from day to day.
Well,
For
let me ask you
myself, if the FNM was to be elected government, I wholly expect to see Brent Simonette as Prime Minister.
Let me ask you,
within
so
12 to 18
what then
months.
what has caused the delay within the Freetown constituency for your ratification? I mean, it seemed at one point it was all systems go.
You would have a process. The PLP's constitution is on its website. The candidate committee met, voted. Our party's constitution is democratic. So Mr. Smith was able to raise an issue that he should be considered, and that is exactly what is happening.
You feel confident you'll still get it?
I feel confident that the candidates committee has voted yet again, because you see what happens, and this is the funny thing I see in the FNM process. You say the constituency party has elected you, 20 people in a constituency of 5,000. And when the party is told that somebody has support, any sensible party would investigate that. And that is what the PLP is doing.
We're going to have to pause for a commercial break. We'll pick up our discussion right after this. Stay with us. More on the record right after this. You're watching On the Record. We are in our second segment with Mark Humes, the FNM candidate for Fort Charlotte. Wayne Munro, who has been given the nod to a certain degree for Freetown, and a DNA candidate for Pinewood, Mr. Lincoln Bain. Mr. Munro, if you could sort of clarify for us what the process is, because we've heard reports that you have been or just about to be ratified. We just wanted to make sure that we didn't sort of mislead our audience.
The process, and by virtue of the PLP Constitution, is that the candidates committee of the party makes a decision, makes a determination, takes any number of things into consideration. Once it makes its decision, that decision has to be ratified by the National General Council of the party. And once it's ratified, then you are the ratified candidate for the party.
And you expect that to happen on Monday?
I'm told that the meeting is set for Monday.
Okay. Gentlemen, let's go into now a further discussion. At the top of the show, we would have heard comments and had a discussion about the fire out there at southwestern Providence involving the dump or waste disposal site or whatever you want to call it. But it's been such a sore issue. Mr. Bain, I'm going to start with you. Your party has said that they presented a solution to the government on this issue. Do you think that the people of Jubilee Gardens should receive some sort of remuneration from the government?
I think that they should. I think that they should receive some form of help. This is a national disaster, and we're treating this so loosely. This is a national disaster that happens every single year. Every year. I was there last year when this happened. I was in the smoke. This year, again, I was there on the scene. It happens every year, and this affects a large portion of our entire population. If a hurricane hits one island, we consider that a disaster. This is hitting a large portion of our society, and we need to do something. Whoever was allowed to build in that area, knowing the situation, that was disgraceful. Whoever allowed them to do it and who built it. These people are victims, and they need restitution.
Mr. Humes, this constituency, literally at the back door of the constituency you are running in, people in your area affected by it, but you are campaigning for an opposition that was once in government that had an opportunity to fix. How do you rationalize this to your constituents and to potential voters?
Sure. Well, first, like Mr. Bain said, this is a national tragedy. It's going to have long-term effect for those local residents and the economy of the area. So I hope that we continue to keep them in our prayers and ask that, we all partner together, not politicize it, but partner together to ensure that those residents are in some ways compensated or well taken care of. Now, I think, like my colleague said in the opening segment, there was a disbursement of funding from the IDB for that, not specifically for the dump, but for the environmental issues. And during that time, I think what we're not getting is, again, it was only even though the loan was $33 million, there was a $21 million disbursement, about 16 million of which has been used. But here's the issue. I think Dr. Minnis, and I was glad to hear him say successive governments have sort of failed in this area.
They haven't they have failed.
Well, Mr. Sawyer,
everybody
yes.
can take some responsibility for what has happened.
But here's what we do have. We do have a government that in 2012, when they came in, said they had the answers. Yes? And so under our microscope, as we look at this issue right now, should be the Progressive Liberal Party. They have failed because they knew about it, sitting in opposition and coming in, they should have addressed it. They had 5 years. We shouldn't just now be running around every time the dump burns and, either they want to take care of the issue or they don't. Coming into this election season, there's no reason why it has not been taken care of.
I'll leave that for the last. Mr. Monroe, I'll allow you to weigh in on
I'm
the
always
discussion.
amazed when people say we shouldn't politicize an issue and then immediately do. I think only a fool would believe that successive governments who have family living in this area have no concern about this issue. The F&M got a lot of money, borrowed money, and put it on the problem, and it did not work. We need to stop being disingenuous, dishonest about this. They attempted, it did not work. The PLP came to power with what it felt was a solution. That was displayed. Renew has backed out, and so that has not worked. The DNA walked with a plan that they claimed would work. Nobody knows what degree of engineering scrutiny that has had. I read the paper this morning and I see that Ken Kerr is putting together a group with some stellar fellow from Canada who says they have the solution. I see that the Chamber of Commerce is saying they're cooperating with the Ministry of Environment and the government in seeking a solution. If we're going to depoliticize something, then let's do that.
So let me
but
ask,
it is wholly dishonest to say you're going to depoliticize it and then get right back when the bottom line is you are suggesting that Bahamian people really want to hurt their families.
And I just want to add to that 1 second. It's because not only did the F&M get monies that they could have used to do this and they failed to do so, they recently released a plan. And in their plan is nothing about this dump. They released a plan with no plans to do anything about this dump, and only after this fire, they're bringing up a discussion. Both parties have failed. The DNA has a plan.
Well, let me address
we're going to bring that right to a close. If elected, after the election, what is the FNM's plan to fix? And gentlemen, you will all have an opportunity.
Sure.
What is the FNM's plan to fix?
Well, one, the FNM's plan is to privatize the dump. We need to look at a consortium. There are a group of individuals in this country already, who are in waste management. Yes, so there should be, should be some sort of cooperative. I'm hearing my colleagues here speak about those partnerships. I think you said the Chamber of Commerce, another group. There should be nothing wrong with these groups coming together to find a solution. So what the F&M is going to do is look at partnering with these individuals, one, to ensure that that's done. The second thing we're going to look at is education, because the educational system must focus on the environment. And a major part of what you see in the F&M's platform is a focus on education and the environment.
That's not a plan, that's an idea.
Well, here's what I'm saying. The DNA, I'm telling you what the F&M is looking at doing. The DNA has said that they have a plan. Mr. McCartney lives in the back of the dump. And we should not only hear from him every time there's a dump fire. There should be a consistent.
Let's let Mr. Bain speak to the DNA's plan. But first, Mr. Monroe, PLP has had 4.5, almost 5 years to fix it. Now you're asking for another term in office to fix. What's going to be different this time around? How are you going to fix it? And what are you going to do that you didn't do this time around?
We all hear about this privatization of it. Renew is a private company. They're backing out because they say the profit incentive caused them to do that. This new thing about letting these consortiums and the Chamber of Commerce act, that's what's happening now. A big thing about the F&M plan is there's nothing really new or special about it. They talk about focus on environment and education, this new educational system. And it was laughable when I heard Denicio de Aguilar talk about giving management of government school to private school, when in his own constituency, the Catholic Board of Education had given over one of its schools to the public system. And so you have to be very careful in scrutinizing it. To suggest that privatization is the answer would be to overlook that Renew is a private company.
So
why they backed
what
out?
is the PLP's answer?
Presently, as the Minister of Environment has said, it is considering a proposal from a consortium privately put together, if that's the F&M's big plan, being driven and put together by Ken Kerr of Providence. They have to be critical of it because you have to give a cycle for things to work. So I engaged this private business like Renew was, and after 2-3 years, you decide that the private incentive doesn't drive it, and then that is a failure. And so you have to be systematic, and that is what is happening. And the Chamber speaks exactly to what they intend to do.
Mr. Bain, I'm going to give you an opportunity. You said that there is a plan on the table by the DNA. Let's say the DNA becomes the government after the next election. What happens day one towards fixing that problem?
Well, I'm going to put it like this. The DNA has a comprehensive plan to deal with it that is both scientific and strategic. You can get it on their website, which is and this is so everyone can go, because it's hard for me to outline this entire plan in a couple seconds that I have to speak. It's on the DNA's website, which is mydnaparty.org. And you can also see it on their Facebook page, both in video form where they're talking about it, and you can get a documentary
So
plan.
people can actually go and look at it.
They can go and look at the plan right now. My problem with both parties that have failed is the PLP has no plan. The F&M is now saying that they're going to privatize it, presenting that as a plan. They're going to educate you about the environment. How does that stop the fires in the dump? Educating me about it. That is, it shows that the F&M has no plans.
Gentlemen, it's time for another break. We're going to return right after this. Stay with us. You're watching on We're attempting to wrap up the show. Gentlemen, we have some closing remarks. Mark Humes, I'm going to begin with you.
Well, first off, let me say thank you for the invitation to be here with you. I want to, thank the Bahamian community for looking at the F&M and working with us through our trials and tribulations to see what we have become today. It is an outstanding party. What I want to remind the Bahamian viewers is the fact that we've had a government, the Progressive Liberal Party, that for the past 4 years, coming into office, told us that they had a plan. They had a plan for crime. They had a plan for unemployment. They had a plan to get us back on the road to prosperity. We recognize that in the last 4 years, that has not happened. Our lives, we are at the edge of the cliff, about to go off. On the other side, vying for our support is the Democratic National Alliance. This group has, if we look at them, have had a clear road up the middle and still have not been able to pull themselves together that at this point they can even attract 39 candidates. Dr. Minnis has done a stellar job throughout it all, proving himself to be an excellent leader.
Mr. Humes,
and we want them to
I'm going to have
consider.
to ask you to wrap up so we can get the other gentleman. Mr. Monroe, closing remarks from you, sir.
Mr. Sawyer, you know, I'm always amazed when people say we're at the edge of a cliff, that people keep wanting to join us on. We're at the edge of this cliff. We have moved the College of the Bahamas to university status. We're moving to expand universal health care to the public. And every time you drive, the car dealers seem to be making tons of money, and we're at the edge of this cliff. The serious crime rate is trending downward. Murder is still unacceptably high for reasons. People will see my statements about crime in the last election. The difference is that the PLP understood that a crime plan is for the Commissioner of Police, gave him back his security of tenure that the FNM had stolen from him, and he is now responsible for crime. The PLP, as it does, focuses on social programs, making people's lives better so their mindset can be right, so they can participate in the Bahamas.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bain, you have the benefit of the last comments on the show.
The fact of the matter is this country is at a point where we need change. And change only comes from something new, something different. When the FNM is in power, one small clique of people benefit and you, the people, suffer. When the PLP is in power, one small clique of people benefit and you, the people, suffer. The PLP has been an abject failure over the last 5 years. The FNM has been an abject failure as an opposition over the last 5 years, and they have no plans. They want to convince you that bringing some candidates into a bad system is going to bring a difference. We saw what happened when they the PLP touted their candidates in the last election, and we see that those persons were made negligible. They had no effect. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for change in this country, and that change is only going to come by going in a different direction.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed being on the show as much as we have enjoyed having you here tonight. So that's going to do it for this edition of the show. I want to extend special thanks to Mr. Bradley Roberts, Mr. Frankie Campbell, Wayne Monroe, Lincoln Bain, Mark Humes, as well as Mr. Branville McCartney, my producer, technical staff, and of course you, the audience, for watching. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, On The Record, Twitter as well, and on Instagram. Just look for Jerome Sawyer On The Record. Give us your feedback and look out for your chance to get in on our discussions. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the current state of politics in our country on the road to general elections. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you next time on The Record.